G'day guys, so in this video I'm going to talk about layers and hierarchy. So they are two related but separate things you need to get your head around. So over on the side you actually have a whole layers tab, and what we start with is just one layer. So I can double click on the name to rename it. I might call this layer cookies. Press enter, and that can rename it. My suggestion is pick short and easy to understand names. Don't write a whole sentence in there because it doesn't fit. So we can hide and unhide layers. We can lock and unlock layers. Down on the bottom, we can add new layers by going create new. And we can also add sub layers. So I tell my students don't use sub layers. So if you click on this arrow, these are sub layers. These are little layers. It's basically every single pen stroke, every single drawing within that layer. Don't use that. It's good to know what's there, but compress it down and only use whole layers. So don't organize using sub layers because it gets way too confusing. Because if you go here, if we unpack, for example, let's go over where's my trees. Let's show everything. What's that layer? That's this one here. If I unpack, you can see how crazy each of those trees are. Then each tree has a whole bunch of other things. Each tree has a head and a top. Okay, so don't use sublayers, it just gets way out of control. So within each layer, we have what's called a hierarchy. Okay, so if we layer multiple objects on top, you can see there's a hierarchy where this lighter orangey brown color is on top. If I right click, we can actually start arranging. So getting to know these shortcuts, control and then left brace and right brace, sends it forward and back one step. And to bring it all the way to the front or send it all the way to the back, you add in shift to that combination. So I can go control shift left bracket, sends it back, control shift right bracket, brings it front, or just control left bracket, it sends it back one step at a time and forward one step at a time on the right one. So now what that does is it still is going to apply even though it's not directly on top. So I can go control shift back, and then when I slide it over, you see it's actually going behind. So it can get a little bit confusing when they're not directly on top in terms of which thing is in front of which. And so if you're button mashing and going, I'm doing it 100 times, it might be because on that layer, like here, imagine how many things we have in this layer. There's literally hundreds of shapes all being combined. So if I want this one to be in front of, so if I zoom in there, if I want that one to be behind, I'm going back. I'm just holding it down, and it takes a while to disappear in front of behind, because it's got all these other ones that were drawn in front of it that it's going behind. Cancel that. One way of remembering is basically whenever you draw a shape, every new shape goes in front of it. Okay, so every new shape you draw gets a bigger priority. So the older the shape, the further back it's going to be, until the point in which you start moving them around and bringing them forward, for example, to change that order. Okay, so the newer the shape, the newer it's going to be. Now, that's all within one layer. So if I select this object, you can see how they have a blue outline around the selection, and the actual objects have a blue outline, and that matches up with this color code that we have here. So if I lock the cookies layer, and if I draw another layer over here, I have to select a layer. I couldn't draw because the cookies layer was locked. Here it is, and even though it has a red stroke, it actually is defined with a red color. So if I change that stroke color to something else, you'll see, if you look really carefully, there's actually a red line going through that blue because it's defining that on layer 2. Now, if I want that to be behind, we can't just go arrange. There's nothing to arrange. There's no other object in this layer. But what we can do is drag it down priority below here. So on your layers, the lower down it is, the further at the back it is. The further the top, the further the front it is. So here we have, as we see, let's hide everything except for the sky. So working from the bottom up, and this is how I want you to draw your landscapes, is start at the back. Add a sky, add a sun rays, and just start adding content working from the back and working your way forwards. Okay? And that way you're organizing your layers, you're organizing the priority, and if you're like, you know what, I want the sun rays to be in front of the clouds, in front of the mountains. So you can actually organize and you can control and put that back. What some people sometimes do is, see how I've got a blue line between things? If I hover on, it's actually going to put it in as a sub layer, which, as I was saying before, is bad. Don't do it. Okay? So just Control Z to undo. So make sure you're aware of your layers, organize your layers and label them appropriately. In here, I kind of did a bad thing in that not all of them are organized nicely. So what I would do to clean it up is I might go and select and clean up all of these objects. So in the next video, I'll show you how I can clean that up.